welcome to the Transformcast, an in-depth show of comics starring the Transformers, from the Marvel Age through to IDW. I'm Andrew, the one who knows his Predacons from his Predaking, and this is Simon.
Who's still the Sparkplug Wiki to Andrew's Optimus Prime.
This episode we have Marvel's issue 3 in a 4-issue limited series titled The Prisoner of War. It's cover dated January 1985. It was reprinted in the Marvel UK issues 5 and 6, dating 17th of November to the 14th of December 1984. The cover was by Mike J. Zeck. It was written by Jim Salicrup, penciler Frank Springer, inker Kim DeMalder and Mike Esposito, colorist Nelson Yomtov, letterers Janice Shang and others, and editor was Bob Budiansky. The cover is nice and bright red. It's Mike J. Zeck's, I believe it's his only Transformers work, and it shows Spider-Man swinging around Megatron, as if you can't tell who it's guest starring.
Yeah, it's like just to make it brutally obvious. But yeah, the first thing that stands out to me for the cover is how kind of settled the art seems. It's like compared to the first two covers, because it's like the first had a very painterly look, the second was kind of brash, and this issue looks more like what you'd expect a Marvel comic to look like.
That's very true. Probably because it's got Spider-Man on.
Partly, probably, actually. But yeah, there's like a consistency to it all that's kind of missing in the prior two.
Yeah, at least everyone that's on the cover looks like they do in the book.
Yes, not like the previous issue with Arthur and Bumblebee.
Yeah, with changing face, and first issue had Optimus Prime absolutely giant, standing over several freeways. In the top left is Gears, rather than Megatron or Optimus.
Oh yeah, do you know, I'd not actually realised that. I'd not glanced up there. But yeah, that's totally unexpected.
We were discussing last episode about who appears in there.
Yeah, that's right. I assumed it was always consistent, but yeah, like you said, it's somebody different.
Another couple of things. Megatron's holding the handle for his arm-mounted cannon. You can see it is attached to his arm, and it's got a handle.
Yeah, the inconsistency of his hand cannon rears its ugly head again. And it also seems like it's in firing action.
Yeah, mid-blast. And his insignia is central on his chest.
Yeah, not slightly off-centre like it was in a lot of panels in the last issue.
Yeah. Well, I think it's a very good cover. This exact thing doesn't happen inside the issue, but it's close enough. It's nice and actiony. Yeah,
it's got lots of action lines, lots of motion. And like I say, it's clear and simple enough. There's not stuff in the background that distracts from the actual subjects.
No, the other Decepticons are coloured purple so your eye's drawn to the altercation between Spider-Man and Megatron.
The fact Spidey's in his black costume is also interesting because it kind of positions the timeline.
Yes, I believe there's a note further in, well, I say further in the issue, inside the issue. There we go. This story takes place before Spider-Man 258. So it takes place after Secret Wars issue 8, where he got the organic black costume, which would later become Venom. Actually, the story behind it is pretty convoluted. He first wore it chronologically in Amazing Spider-Man 252, and 2 months later he actually got the costume in Secret Wars issue 8. And because the creative team of The Amazing Spider-Man didn't want him wearing the alien costume, by the time he got it in Secret Wars issue 8, he only wore it for, I think, 3 issues before
Was it related to Secret Wars, or was it just some sort of politics in the studio behind it for some reason?
Well, the team behind Secret Wars decided that they wanted Peter Parker to update his costume from the red and blue. The easiest way they decided was to give him this costume that reacted to his thoughts and would later be the Venom symbiote. But the the writer, I believe it was the writer and the artist of The Amazing Spider-Man, didn't like the concept, so they were okay with the look, so they ditched the costume and he just started wearing black latex.
Yeah, that is interesting.
Yeah, due to the cover date of this, he didn't actually have the costume at the time because Secret Wars #8 came out in October. And this is January.
Yeah, that's interesting. I didn't actually realise that because I own the Secret Wars, but it's the trade paperback, so I've never really appreciated the dates and times on things.
Reading it at the time must have been quite confusing. Oh, where's this black costume come from? He's talking about Secret Wars.
Yeah, why is he in a black outfit? Where's his red and blue?
And unfortunately, Marvel wouldn't learn from that, and even coming to recent events, you find out what happened in the final issue of an event from issue 1 relaunch of whatever the next book's coming out.
Yeah, from the following arc. Yeah, it's like, oh, this is the quick recap.
Oh, where's Tony Stark? Oh, that's what happened to him, even though it hasn't happened yet. But enough about event comics. They're well beyond the remit of this vodcast.
But these are event comics, Andrew.
Every issue's an event in itself. Right, should we make a start in summary?
Yes, let's. Let me get my summary voice. We open in the skies of Oregon, where Starscream, Thundercracker, and Skywarp ferry an angry cargo, the man called Sparkplug. Returning to Castle Decepticon, Megatron threatens Sparkplug into implementing his unknown idea to create fuel for the Decepticons. Sparkplug realises that Castle Decepticon was created from the remains of the Harrison nuclear plant, and reminisces about his capture during the Korean War. Meanwhile, the Autobots have recovered from their resounding tie last issue, but have to return to the Ark to refuel. They arrive to find Ratchet has been repairing the Ark, and seems to have given himself a facelift in the meantime. Back at Castle Con, Sparkplug acquiesces to Megatron's demands and takes a sample of Rumble's fuel. Saying that it requires a lab, Sparkplug sends the Decepticons to the University of Oregon to steal equipment from the chemistry department. While Soundwave carries that back, Rumble somehow lassos Starscream with a gasoline tanker. From Washington DC to Moscow, to S.H.I.E.L.D.'s helicarrier and New York, people have begun hearing about what's occurring in Oregon. The media and army have surrounded CastleCom, including the Daily Bugle photographer Peter Parker, also known as the Spectacular Spider-Man, who gets changed with the intent to get inside the castle itself.
It's certainly packing in a lot in the first half of the issue.
Yeah, that's one thing that I noticed actually reading this. It's a lot, pacing-wise, there's a lot more going on, and it's a lot more interesting to read. It feels a lot less like exposition panel after exposition panel. There's a lot more going on.
Yeah, for the first 2 issues, Frank Salacrop was just the scripter. Bill Mantlo did the plot. So it's interesting to see what he does when he's the only writer of note.
Yeah, there's definitely a sort of, not really a tonal shift, because it still feels connected, but it's definitely like it's finding its feet.
Yeah, and everyone is at least, they're starting to look like their classic looks, the ones everyone knows, which is funny since this is the only issue Frank Springer did, I believe. Doubting myself now. No, I misspoke. It's just the cover.
It's the only one you wanted him to do.
No, I'm nothing against Frank Springer. His Transformers look great. Right, let's go through this page by page. Start off, Sparkplug's still inside Starscream, where he was shoved through the undercarriage somehow.
Yeah, he's sucked up through his undercarriage, which out of context sounds really wrong, and ended up in his cockpit, which also sounds really wrong. It's an absolutely amazing panel. I love that panel with him bashing on the cockpit roof. I think that's brilliant. It's really good.
It also shows that there's no joystick.
Yeah, literally no controls. It's just a stark, metallic, empty panel.
So again, like Bumblebee, it's not fully furnished for humans to use.
Yeah, whatever process Auntie used to scan the vehicles wasn't very thorough. Just kind of got the general idea of the shape and basic concept of what the thing was without any specifics.
Yeah. And next page, they arrive at Castle Decepticon.
Yeah, which is slowly morphing into something different every time we see it. It's kind of more moulded with the rock face this time, and it kind of looks more like something you'd see out of He-Man, actually. Although obviously more metallic, but from a distance it looks more fantasy-y than sci-fi.
The fourth panel down makes me chuckle. You'll never get away with this. I'm an American citizen.
And I just like how he just doesn't even give it any sort of response.
American, what's that? You're all humans. We don't care about any of you.
Yes, the one thing on this page that I do like is that it actually points out that the ridiculousness of how much bigger like certain Decepticons are when they transform from their small transformed state. It's like astonishingly enlarged hundreds of times over and over into Soundwave, Megatron, Frenzy, and Ravage. They don't actually explain where that mass comes from or why, but they just do.
It's Transformium. Not hand-wavy at all.
Yeah, it's hand-wavium at its finest.
Next page, they negotiate terms. What you want from me?
Yeah, well, one thing that's interesting about the previous page, actually, which was just pre-transformation, is the two Decepticon jets there. They're coloured exactly the same. So, is there any way to tell them two apart?
No, the one on the right is more blue.
I guess he's got a bluer chest, yeah, and there's a leg part that's slightly red on the left-hand one, yeah.
That'd make him Thundercracker and the other one Skywarp.
Yeah.
Right, on the next page they go inside because they've been chatting on the roof of Castle Con.
Yeah, the interesting thing here, I think, on this page is the characterization of Starscream, because he's finally becoming the arrogant, overconfident Starscream that we know from both the cartoons and like later comics. But it's weird because it's kind of like a disjoint from how he's been portrayed so far, because he's kind of been like a subservient yes man up to this point, and now all of a sudden in this page is instantly the opposite.
No, you brought it up in the first issue that he was trying to sway Megatron to follow one course of action.
Yeah, he was trying to undermine him, yeah. That's right, actually. I was misremembering. But yes, he definitely seems much more of the sarcastic self.
Yeah, definitely. And Megatron's already threatening him in his thoughts.
Yeah, Megatron's look in that middle panel just looks off to me, and I can't quite decide what's wrong with it.
It's the mouth. It's because it's so small.
Yeah,
on the cover, it's a proper mouth.
Yeah. And yeah, that's actually that's right about Starscream, because he was the one character that I pointed out that is actually quite already characterized in the first issue. So
yeah, Megatron's insignias off center.
Oh, it is. Yeah, that's really annoying.
It must be how Frank Springer wanted it to be, or perhaps it was how it was on the toy.
It's just weird how it does jump between certain, like from page to page it moves slightly, which is understandable, but it's like in the cover art it's clearly central.
Well, in the top panel it's absolutely huge.
It is, yeah, actually. It's almost as big as his chest plate.
We go on to the next page and Megatron and Sparkplug argue, and then Sparkplug seems to miss when he was a prisoner of war in Korea.
Yeah, let's reminisce about that horrible time. I just find it amazing that he can go, oh look, it's constructed from the nuclear power plant. It's like, how can you deduce that? Everything's smooth and metallic, and like there's not really any identifiable parts. It's not like there's a big pile of nuclear rods sat in the corner or something.
Well, this is chemistry PhD kicking in.
This is true. if Megatron's HUD in the very top panel just looks wrong, I don't know. It looks more like a HUD than I don't know. There's just something about how he's drawn in these few pages that really looks weird to me.
Sometimes it's a helmet, sometimes it's a hoodie.
He does look dark and ominous in that first panel, though. I'll give it that.
Yeah. As we go on to the next page, we rejoin the Autobots who had all collapsed last issue.
Yes, because they'd run out of fuel, and that had inexplicably made them all fall to the ground, but now apparently they're okay enough to stand up and move about. It's all right.
They really need to get some solar panels. Oh, I like that the trailer's still there.
Yeah, it is, and there's no insignia. I can't remember if there was an insignia on it before.
I can't remember if there was.
I know there definitely is in the cartoon, but I actually can't remember if I've noticed it in the comics up to now. And then we get the familiar Bumblebee, as he's now being redrawn to what we expect him to look like.
Yeah, rather than hockey mask.
Yeah, rather than the Jason, the Jason Transformer.
The bottom panel with the Jesse and O. Where'd all these rejects from a George Lucas film come from? What George Lucas film has giant robots?
I was going to say, has he ever done a giant mecha film? In which case, I now want to watch that. Is this some mythical parallel dimension, George Lucas, where instead of Star Wars, he did the Transformers films in the 70s?
I did briefly look up his filmography, and before 1984, he hadn't done anything that had giant robots, unless O thinks that Optimus Prime is an AT-AT.
Yeah, the only thing I think can assume that they're talking about is Star Wars, but how you get from Star Wars to giant robots, I'm not entirely sure.
Yeah.
Just generic sci-fi, I guess.
Yeah, it just bugged me.
It is very annoying. I noticed it and I was thinking, which George Lucas films are talking about?
I was about to go on to the next panel, but I've just remembered the police turned up in the last issue.
They did, yeah. And they're not nowhere.
Why are they not trying to arrest Optimus and the Autobots?
Continuity in a comic? Who are you trying to... Who do you think this is?
Well, on the next page, second and third panels both have a police car in them. And I'm not just talking about Prowl.
And lots of crowd, yeah. It's like all these people watching. So the police are still there. They're even, yeah, like you say, left a panel in the transformation shot. It's like, but this is all normal now. Everyone's adapted to it. They're not bothered by the transforming robots in front of them anymore.
Well, the thing is, the police car is there, but where are the officers? Even in that crowd shot at the bottom, they're not.
That's a good point, actually. It's just random crowds people. A nice diverse mix of people, I have to say.
Yeah, that's true.
Again, I like the transformation shot in the middle, although the scale of those four vehicles is totally off. Look at the size of the cab compared to is that Prowl?
Prowl is huge, and Optimus is small if you compare him to Hound and Bumblebee.
See, I was tempted to say Jazz then, but then I remembered that's definitely not Jazz. But yeah, Bumblebee definitely looks more like his normal self. His transformation looks fine. I love the little beetle.
Yeah, it's a nice touch. Prowl's transformation's a nice touch because his arms are folding underneath him, and that's what happens with the toy. Ah,
I didn't know that. So that is a pretty cool touch.
Yeah, it's nice that they've got these toys and they're incorporating the toy transformations into the more cartoony designs.
Yeah, it's kind of a hybrid in that sense, in that it's moving more towards the cartoon stylings for the designs, but they're keeping toy elements in that way.
And we have Hound and Sideswipe going into the trailer because they're low on fuel, even though they're all low on fuel.
Yeah, the Nebulous were all... It was made out that everybody is. It's like, oh no, fuel's so low that we can't even move. But it's alright, Optimus has got enough to get us back to base, apparently.
However far away it is. Next page, Buster says goodbye to his friends, doesn't invite them along.
No, O kind of written eggs out on it. It's kind of offered and he goes, oh no, I've got better things to be doing. And Jesse suddenly decides that, oh, that's really brave of him. I must go and give him a kiss and a hug.
Well, they are dating, one can assume, because they were making out at the movies.
This is true, actually, yeah. And I like in the next panel. Do you think we'll ever see him again?
Well, he has just been kidnapped by aliens.
I love how it describes all the onlookers as startled, even though you don't really get that impression.
That middle third panel. Who is this Jeep? Because Hound doesn't have a roof.
Yeah, Hound's an open top, and
and
I'm not
he's
sure
inside the trailer.
Yes, that's a good point. And who's the red convertible looking thing at the bottom of the panel?
That's a good question.
I think someone just said, "Oh, draw some cars," because the other car doesn't really look like any of the Transformers. I think that's supposed to be Hound, isn't it? But it doesn't really look like him.
Just having a quick look, see if I can, because it's not Cliff Jumper, because the Cliff Jumper has a windscreen and a spoiler. It's unclear who one's following Optimus are, except for in the bottom panel, Wind Charger is the blue-purple one.
No, that's interesting. Oh, sorry. No, I was just going to say, it does look like someone was just said, "Oh, can you just draw? We need an army jeep and two sporty-looking cars."
Next page, we carry on and arrive at the Ark, in still buried under Mount St. Hilary.
Yeah, that's a point, actually. Do they actually mention where Decepticon Mountain is?
No, unless they do in a couple of pages when we go back there.
Yeah, I think it's just is it just local area? It's still just very vague, isn't it?
It's just Oregon. In the fourth panel, we see Hound behind that other Jeep.
Oh yeah, so it's definitely not Hound.
And he should be inside the trailer.
Yeah, and that red sporty car's still there. Yeah, there's definitely no consistency between these panels.
No.
Because it's like it's hard to make out on the next panel what order they're in, but yeah, it's all over the place.
And they arrive back, and Ratchet's given himself a bit of a redesign because he now.
I was going to say, he looks different. Is that more like his animation form, or is that more toy-like?
Yeah, the toy version is his head looks through the windscreen.
Ah, that's right. I think you've mentioned that before. Yeah.
Nothing much. They don't say anything much. They have to use what precious fuel we have left to refuel.
Because isn't that what fuel's for?
He lists Cliff Jumper, Brawn, Sunstreaker, Windcharger, Hound Gears, and himself. So he's going in to save Sparkplug with a small team. Because aren't there like 16 of them?
Yes, there's quite a few Autobots. It's the Decepticons that are a bit thin on the ground, isn't it?
Yeah. Next page, we see a very childish-looking Buster before going back to Castle Khan.
Yes, and we have the Megatron torture scene, torturing Buster with Laserbeak. To say he's a robot is not very accurate with his drawing around him. The hand could use some improvement. 0 out of 10 Laserbeak. I'm not impressed.
I suppose it is a smaller target than he's used to. He needs to recalibrate.
Don't make excuses for robotic enemies.
So Sparkplug agrees, and Rumble gives a sample of their fuel. And just unscrews his hand and it pours out. It does not look like a safe design feature.
Yeah, that's not a very good storage mechanism. And also, if that's solid fuel like that, they're massive. It's like twice the size of Buster just for one of them. So I'm not entirely sure what he's expecting to be able to do with these things, if they are solid. But I'm sure his chemistry degree will come in handy.
Yes. So he sends, in the next page, he sends the Decepticons to the University of Oregon to steal a large piece of the chemistry department.
Yeah, unnamed machinery. Just rip it all out of the chemistry department. That'll do.
This is what the human requested. This huge thing.
I'm surprised they just didn't rip out the chemistry department and take it all as one or something.
And as I wrote in the summary, Rumble manages to lasso Starscream which in the first issue I remember bringing up the fact that they were having conversations with the jets that were flying overhead.
Yes, that's right.
You shouldn't be able to have a conversation, so you shouldn't be able to lasso, but since they can, obviously they can.
Yes, the logic is painful.
Could, in theory, a jet tow a tanker with an attached truck?
I guess. Maybe. But I would have imagined it would just either snap it or just... I don't know, actually. Probably not.
But then we go to Washington, D.C., where the unnamed president is being informed that the Russians are probably controlling the Decepticons.
No, they're unable to prove at this time that it's the Russians, but clearly it's the Ruskies involved. It has to be.
And then the next page we go to Moscow, where they're having a similar conversation.
Yep, and it's got to be a Russian saying it because the sentence ends in comrade.
It always entertains me when comics translate something. There's a little star, an asterisk saying that this is translated, but then there's a word or two words within the angle brackets that are not translated.
Yeah, it's like a mix, but it's like everyone knows what that means, so we don't need to use the English word because this clearly makes it sound more Russian.
Comradsky.
just its ski on the end of everything. They must be testing their Star Wars Arsenal ski.
And then, we see a couple of Marvel stalwarts. The Nick Fury, Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. with Dum Dum Dugan.
Yeah, which is really interesting because they're clearly trying to cement it as in the Marvel universe, which they obviously back out of later on, but because it would be really unwieldy to try and mash a world full of giant robots into the other comics where they're never mentioned or seen or even referred to. So, but it's interesting that they crammed so many cameos in this issue.
Well, the next panel with Joe Robertson at least makes sense because we find out why Parker has been sent there, and the box at the top says the Daily Bugle's new editor-in-chief. This was one of the several times that J. Jonah Jameson had to step back because of health issues, or was ousted or sacked because Norman Osborn bought the paper.
Yeah, I was going to say, does this place it within a particular Spidey arc, or is it just like an offhand comment?
At the time, Jameson wasn't working for the Bugle for one reason or another. The main thing that sets it in a specific period of time is the second to last panel where Spider-Man's changing. Well, Peter Parker's changing to Spider-Man without just by thinking about it.
Yeah, you can see the symbiote slowly taking over his arms in that panel. It's quite a cool image. What's interesting to me as well is if you look at the pose of Peter on the bottom left and the news reporter in the middle panel, they were obviously using the same frame of reference because that's pretty much exactly the same pose.
That's true. One thing Nick Fury says about if that big green fire-snorting lizard is loose again, I quit. I have to assume he's talking about Fin Fang Foom, and he regularly attacks New York, so Nick should have quit by now. Right, so Spidey swings off, and then we cut back into Castle Con, where Sparkplug's making good progress with the fuel.
Yes. So I guess this is time for summary part 2. Megatron sends the jets out to attack the human army, while Spider-Man spots Gears scout in the area. He gets on Gears' back, both physically and verbally, but when Thundercracker throws a tank and Gears saves some people from it, Spider-Man realises that Gears is one of the good guys. Spidey returns with Gears to speak to Optimus, and by driving Hound he manages to lead them through the soldiers, but the moment they transform, both the army and the Decepticons open fire on them. Gears and Spidey slink off to sneak into Castle Decepticon, but Gears runs out of power, although is thankfully saved by Spider-Man and his webbing. However, their infiltration is detected by Soundwave, who dispatches Ravage to kill them. The Catbot gets knocked out by Gears, and then also knocks out Soundwave and rips through the one wall separating them from Megatron and Sparkplug. Spider-Man webs Megatron up from head to foot, but it proves useless against the mighty Decepticon leader. He blasts the floor, sending the Autobot and Human to their doom. Spider-Man tries to save both of them, but only manages to prevent Sparkplug from the fall. Gears hits the ground with a boom. The Autobots gather their fallen comrade and return to the Ark with the two humans, where Spidey is told that Gears isn't dead, although he also isn't quite alive. Spider-Man bids them well in their war and swings off before Gears is revived. When he rouses, he warns that the Decepticons got what they needed from Sparkplug.
It's a very action-packed second half.
Yeah, definitely. It's like even the pacing in the first half, it moves at some clip. So it's been quite an interestingly paced episode comic compared to previous issues.
Well, it's fighting on multiple fronts. You've got humans versus Decepticons, humans versus Autobots, Autobots versus Decepticons, Spider-Man versus Decepticons.
Spider-Man versus Autobots, Spider-Man versus everybody. Yeah, so it starts up with Sparkplug trying to create a magical alchemical formula to convert our fuel into their fuel, even. All the while, whilst the humans the army are trying to communicate, which the Decepticons want no part of.
We come in peace. Too bad the Decepticons don't. I'm curious where Sparkplug got these beakers and stuff.
Clearly the Decepticons picked them up whilst they were getting the other machinery from the Oregon University.
That one machine.
Yeah, sorry, that one singular magical bit of machinery.
I like how in the final panel the pilot's helmet has United States Air Force written on it.
Yeah, slightly off centre and to the side, because that's where it would naturally be written.
It's like this panel's too plain. Let's stick this in.
Yeah, it was funny how Megatron just says, "Oh, Starscream can handle it." So what Starscream's first thing is like, "Plug."
Sorry, you broke up there when you said that last bit.
Oh, sorry. No, I was just saying. I find it funny that Megatron sends Starscream to handle the army, which we're just trying to communicate via radio, but for some reason there's tons of troops outside, and Starscream just cluster bombs everybody. Then we have Buzzsaw sawing a plane's wing off, just because.
Yeah, but the pilot ejects because he's got his parachute in the next panel. Next page, Thundercrackers messing with the pilot, and you have to assume that one dies because otherwise he'd eject into Thundercracker's crotch and die anyway.
Yeah, with a groin that size, that's going to be painful. I do find it weird that Skywarp just teleports with no explanation. It's just like he just magically can teleport.
No, they did mention it in the first issue while they were discussing their favourite.
Yeah, do they explain how? I mean, we know he can, but he just does.
It's just his ability, like Sideswipe's jetpack.
Yes, and Ratchet's jet boost.
Ravage.
I'll get those names right eventually. They're too similar. One's a cat, the other's not.
Then we have Spider-Man coming across Gears, and obviously giant robot. There's giant robots attacking, so
2 and 2 to make 5. Spider-Man makes the assumption he usually makes, which is usually wrong.
Well, it's like any team up, and Spider-Man's been in many team ups.
By this point, he should just realise that the first person he comes into contact with is probably a good guy, and he's just misunderstood the situation.
And then when he does that in his own book, he gets shot.
Yes, the crowd below going, oh, it's one of those monsters. And he's with Spider-Man. The Bugle was right. He's one of the bad guys. Just from this one occurrence, quite clearly you can't be trying to stop him or doing anything. He's quite clearly a bad guy because he's just in the same airspace.
Look, he's a menace. We all know it.
Well, that's what J. Jonah wants you to think. I just love how Gears tries to shoo him away in the next panel as well. Shoo, go away.
As you do with the spider. The final panel, I'm on your side, then explain why your buddy is tossing that at us. What? Go to the next page, and it's a tank.
Yeah.
And Spidey says, they don't see the tank. Who doesn't see a tank?
Especially how it's drawn in that panel. It's like bigger than everything else.
Fortunately, Gears does, the caption says. Gears being the only person who's seen the tank, even though Spider-Man's the one who pointed it out.
Yes, that's slightly incongruous. And it's also funny here, I do like how Spider-Man is literally just doing everything he can to hold on to Gears rather than actually helping, because he'd quite ably be able to assist here, but no, he's grabbing onto his shoulders in the first panel on the bottom, and then is grabbing onto his arm in the next one.
Feel this bicep in it, buff. It kind of explains why Gears is flying, because he's creating a cushion of compressed air under his feet. Because otherwise, well, as we discussed last issue, he doesn't have a jetpack of his own.
No, so he's basically a fancy version of compressed air. He's basically got a lot of those cans of compressed air that someone's bought and put in his feet.
Of course, that's the only possible explanation.
Yeah, I'll go with that.
Then Gears takes, on the next page, Gears takes Spidey to meet Optimus, who has the bright idea of stealing a soldier's helmet so that guy can die from a head wound, and driving Hound through the blockade.
Yeah, I do like that they on the next page when we get there that they actually comment on how ridiculous this is and just hand wave it off.
Yeah, who cares? We're bugging out on the next page.
Yeah. It's like sometimes the best plans are the simplest. It's like, no, sometimes the best plans are the laziest to write and therefore easiest to just quickly come up with. But yeah, on to the next page, and we've got the army troops at the checkpoint just going, oh, whatever. We don't really care.
Why are all those other cars following the Jeep? What should they be following? But they transform and get attacked by the army and the Decepticons.
Yeah, really disappointing transformation panel as well. It just looks like a mess of nothing.
Yeah, I suppose it's not as good as the other two, but they are trying to fit a bit more in.
Yeah, I suppose it is quite a small panel as well that they had to fill. But yeah, it's not as clear and interesting as the other ones.
Then we see, second to last panel, Sunstreaker's shoulders aren't just for decoration. They are ground-to-air missiles. I'm curious by his remark, "You're not as fast as you thought, Scarlet. This proves that I'm Cybertron's greatest warrior." So it was down to Skywarp and Sunstreaker.
Yeah, it's like that's a bit of a weird competition and comparison. It's like, because you're saying that Optimus is terrible, or
well, everyone's terrible compared to Sunstreaker because his weapon hit.
Because he managed to hit something. It's just funny because it kind of portrays Cybertron as if it had this great big leaderboard of like who's the greatest warrior. It's like, oh no, Skywarp is today. I'd really need to beat him to get above him on this leaderboard. It's like
it's like Cybertron Ninja Warrior, except it's Cybertron Greatest Warrior. Go to the next page after Rumble's attack, and Ron gets to belt another tape. So far, he's punched Laserbeak, Ravage, and now Rumble.
Oh, that's true, actually. Yeah, I'd forgotten about that. Yeah, he's literally only taken on the the little ones.
Well, he doesn't appear to have a gun, so at least he's good for something.
Oh, his pose on that second panel is fun, though. Looks like he's just waving his hands like he's dancing as he gets zapped.
Frenzy saves his brother so Rumble's attacking a couple of Autobots, then gets punched and suddenly Brawn's all by himself.
Yeah.
Because no one comes to help him. But then we see Spider-Man and Gears making their way into Castle Con.
Yeah, and I have to say, I kind of struggled to understand what Gears is doing in the very last panel. I'm guessing he's jumping from where he was in the previous panel, but it's not clear exactly what's occurring positionally.
I'd assume it's his compressed air, because there's the sput sound effect.
Yeah, that's true. It must be his compressed air flight.
Do all humans have powers like yours? Do all Autobots have powers like yours?
I do like Spidey's response, though. Not since I checked last. I'd feel real foolish if they did. Yeah, the Spidey writing is pretty on point in this as well. It's pretty good. And the reference to him being your friendly out-of-town Spider-Man on the previous panel as well, which is fun.
On the next page, Gears' power is giving out again.
Yeah, which does make it seem like it is his jets, because that wouldn't really make sense otherwise.
He must have not filled up as much as the others.
Yeah, so Spidey fires a web, grabs hold of him, says he's really heavy, even though he's still managing to hold him, even though only his foot is still attached to the wall.
Yeah, it's not even his entire foot.
No, it's just like the tippy toes, the balls of his feet.
Proportionate strength of a spider.
But then in the next panel, he's fully gripped up again, and then Gears has got enough power that he can still operate. Apparently, it's just his jets. And then we get onto a really brave and snarky Buster Witwicky, who's rather brave in the face of being surrounded by evil robots.
Yeah, calls him Bullethead. Take your stinking fuel.
Yeah, insolence from slaves whose value has ended is not tolerated by Megatron, except he tolerates it here.
Yeah,
so
and doesn't kill him instantly. Going on to the next page, the dialogue balloons kind of more something Soundwave should be saying rather than Megatron.
Yeah, did they draw the wrong character? Because that's definitely Soundwave's thought balloons.
I don't know if they drew the wrong character or put the wrong words in his balloons.
Yeah, because that second one especially only makes sense if it's Soundwave that's thinking it.
Well, I suppose Megatron could be bigging up Soundwave.
But then it contradicts with the first panel where he says my senses.
That's true.
So that's a very weird panel, actually. There's something gone horribly wrong there. But
the second panel is a bit odd as well. This place is big enough to hold the Super Bowl in. Really? It's what, 6-7 parts of a nuclear power plant.
But moulded into something completely unintelligible, apart from if you're Buster Witwicky, you can clearly tell that it used to be a nuclear power plant. Or parts of a nuclear power plant.
Spidey dispatches Frenzy and Rumble. Ravage leaps from the shadows. We know he can hide in the shadows, and he's got stealth jets.
He's also got his stealth jets, which on both panels as well, although they disappear on the third one.
They're behind Spider-Man's calf.
Oh, we'll go with that, yeah. Yeah, Spider-Man's clearly obscuring them.
On the next page, the second panel, we can't say that Spider-Man's obscuring them there.
No, Spider-Man's bum is.
It looks like on the left side, there should be a stealth jet there, but it's been miscoloured.
His stealth jets are just being stealthy, just like Ravage.
And then Gears comes and punches him, taking on Brawn's role.
Oh no, is this where we find out next issue Brawn's not there because Gears is now the new Brawn? I love how he says to send you back to Shadowland, as if it's a place.
I do like Spider-Man amstraying through the closing door, not trying to stop the door from closing or anything. But,
yeah, which you'd probably be able to do. But then, like you say,
it turns out to not matter in the slightest because Gears comes through it.
He just does his Kool-Aid Man impression and just bursts through the wall.
And then the two of them very easily dispatch Soundwave. Soundwave is seldom so easily beaten.
Yeah, it's like he's probably the strongest overall Decepticon, and he just gets a tap on the shoulder.
Yeah, In terms of power, it definitely goes Megatron, Soundwave, everyone else.
Your distractions were of great value.
Then on the next page, it doesn't look so much as a tap. It looks like he really did a number on Soundwave's shoulder.
Yeah, it's completely busted open. It's like it's
with the zit zit sound effect. And then we have the scene from the cover with Spider-Man wrapping Megatron up.
Yeah, I was trying to tell if the scale of gears was off there, but I don't think you really get a good comparison elsewhere.
I think the bottom panel, as the floor's blasting away, is the closest you can draw a comparison, and it looks pretty accurate.
Yeah. But yeah, it's like, it does seem a bit strange that Megatron decides to blast out a hole in the floor when he's literally just knocked Gears to the ground and could just blast him, but now we'll blast around you to make you fall instead.
Well, it gets rid of all three of them, I suppose, with just one blast.
Yeah, Spidey's fine. He's there, but he dives after them to save them. So,
and it turns out his webs aren't strong enough to catch a falling Gears twice, because he caught him once, falling once. I suppose he fell further this time, so he's going faster.
Yeah, it does use the excuse of now with added momentum, but he had momentum from the last time as well. He was falling just as badly as he is now.
Yeah, but not as far, I suppose. Spider-Man's kind of upset.
Yes, because all the other Autobots have gone and found the pieces, and Spider-Man's all, how can you all be so cold and unfeeling just because they're not showing emotion the same? We've collected all the bits of him. And Buster at the bottom saying, don't you even have mechanical hearts?
Sparkplug.
Sparkplug even. Yes, the older one.
The thing is, how far could these parts have spread?
Yeah, assuming if he made a single impact, surely he's mostly intact and anything would just be there around him.
Yeah, he fell straight down. He wasn't coming in at an angle.
And it's not like he was shot and he was falling down in pieces that could have spread over space.
But in either case, they go back to the Ark. Father and son are reunited. Buster looks 10 years old.
I also find it really funny, actually, going back to the previous page with them doing the death, and Optimus saying, the humans don't understand our form of life is vastly different from theirs, but there's no time to explain now. It's like, would it really be so difficult as to just say, no, he's not dead, he'll be alright? You don't need to explain, just say that everything will be alright. He's not dead.
Yeah, it doesn't it seem like it would take much to explain. The 1, 2, 3, 4, 5th panel, Optimus Prime's head's tiny.
Oh, it is, yeah. It's like his the voodoo head out of Beetlejuice.
And actually, the 3rd panel, Optimus is wearing some of those aviator goggles.
That's really weird, actually. I've not actually noticed his eyes in that panel. That's really weird.
It's like Frank Springer forgot what he was supposed to look like.
But yeah, the little tiny head on his body on that 5th panel, that's really
disconcerting.
Yeah, and they managed to revive Gears to minimum operating level. Incredible, he's trying to speak.
Meg. And then, shock horror, Sparkplug did what Megatron told him to do.
We, of course, already knew that from like half a dozen pages back, but huge revelation.
Yeah, how will we explain this?
Yeah, those last few panels are a bit scruffy. It's like that middle left panel especially is kind of all over the place. It's hard to actually tell what's going on in the panel.
Yeah, it does seem to rush to the ending. They've got to get rid of Spider-Man and bring Gears back to life, set up the next issue.
Yeah, like you say, they do dispatch of Spidey really quickly. It's like literally 2 panels and then it's like, oh, I've got to go because I've got a plane to catch. Bye.
Yeah, giant robots. Yeah, carry on. Next issue is your final issue. It won't matter to me.
Yeah, it's kind of funny because it's like, he goes, oh, if the rest of you are just half as brave as Gears, those Decepticons are in big trouble. It's like, but you've just undercut all the setup for that had any meaning, because he didn't die bravely at all. He's fine, look.
Well, he's brought back after Spider-Man leaves.
Yeah, so Spidey thinks he's dead.
On the whole, it's a good issue.
It's a great issue, yeah. It's the best one of the 3 so far for pacing and actual quality of both drawing throughout, apart from, like I say, this last page seems rushed, but But yeah, even the dialogue is overall a lot better. There's a lot less exposition dumping and explanation panels and much more normal talking.
Yes, no nightly talking like Optimus had last issue. If there is but one of us amongst us.
Yeah, no, almost breaking into Shakespearean English. Yeah, it's much more normal, conversational almost. Even though the Decepticons they still speak distinctly different, but yeah, it makes a lot more sense to read panel to panel.
Yeah, very good issue. It had the first appearance of no new Autobots, no new Decepticons, but it had Dum Dum Dugan, Joe Robertson, Nicholas Fury, Peter Parker, aka Spider-Man, and the President of the United States. I think out of all of those, the President's the only one who's going to return, but we'll see. Missing from the previous issue were the Autobots Bluestreak and Huffer.
Yeah, they didn't even get a mention.
No, at least last issue, Huffer got a mention.
I wonder if they'll reappear.
Eventually. They're probably going to be in the UK issue as we cover in a couple of episodes' time.
Does he not appear in issue 4 of this miniseries?
We'll find out, won't we?
Oh, you've got me now. I need to listen to the next one.
If you want to check out this issue, it was reprinted in 1985's Transformers Special, 1985's The Transformers Collected Comics US #1, The Story Begins, 1986's Die Transformer #2 and 3, 1987's The Transformers Comics Magazine #2, 1987's The Transformers The Complete Works Part 2, 2003's Transformers Beginnings, and 2011's The Transformers Classics Volume 1. It's not been reprinted in as many places as the other issues because it features Spider-Man, and until 2011 IDW weren't able to get permission to reprint it. Instead, there was a text piece explaining what happened in the issue and calling Spider-Man Arachnid Man.
Oh, that's interesting. That's a really fun bit of trivia. I had no idea.
Thought you'd enjoy that.
Licensing drama, still even a thing in the early 80s.
Next issue, we'll be covering the Transformers issue 4, The Last Stand, which is the final issue in this 4-part miniseries, before issue 5.
Yeah, so at this point, they didn't know that it was going to be a long-running comic. They still assumed that the next issue was going to be the end, or did they already know at this point?
I would assume that the 4 issues were... They had an outline for the 4 issues and knew how it was going to end. But it takes roughly 3 months for a comic to from being written to being put on the stands, so by this issue they should have known that they were going to do an issue 5. So it must have sold much better than they imagined it would.
I mean, how can a comic about giant robot monsters about giant robots punching each other in the face, how could that not sell?
They're robot aliens, not monsters.
This is true, but aren't we all monsters, really?
Yes, who is the real monster? Us or Spider-Man and the army?
Well, J. Jonah Jameson's already got an answer for you. It's clearly that menace Spider-Man. He's the real bad guy in everything.
Right, thank you for joining me, and thanks for watching. This has been Moving Pictures with the Transformcast.